And we are live. Hi there, everybody. My name's Emily Crookston, and I'm here with another episode of my Own Your Expertise interview series. This time we're doing it live. So if you're watching us out there, we'd love to see your comments, love to see what you're thinking. And if you're watching the replay, same deal. Feel free to chime in wherever it makes sense. So again, introducing myself, I'm Emily Crookston, owner and decider of all things at the Pocket PhD. I'm the ghostwriter for Rebels, Renegades, and Mavericks, and I really love helping experts get big ideas out of their heads and into the world. Today, I'm here with Kris Hughes. Kris runs his own content strategy consultancy, and his business shares his name. It's Kris Hughes. You can find him here on LinkedIn, of course, or at krishughes.com. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kris, and have you tell us a little bit more about who you work with and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here to talk today. Yeah, so a couple different things. I started in the content strategy world and kind of digital media world about 10 years ago as a blogger, as a sports blogger, and kind of wrote my way out of writing, ironically. Learned a lot in the sports kind of sports media world and the digital publishing world. Worked for a digital publisher here in Austin for 4 years and really took a lot from that and figured out that, a lot of what I was learning, I could teach, to other people through small group coaching and one-on-one coaching because I was self-taught too. I kind of entered into that world without much knowledge and was flailing around a little bit and learning as I went. And, I really like to impart that knowledge to other people. So I do a few different things. I work for a couple of companies here in Austin, kind of on more formalized consulting contracts, where I'm really working to help them build their content strategy and stand that up, and to some extent to execute on that and do some writing. But I really, enjoy the coaching side and working with solopreneurs and people who have founded startups and are looking to build a content operation from the ground up, or maybe they've gotten started a little bit and aren't entirely comfortable with where it's headed and, just need a little guidance and help to take it to the next step. And the third, that happens sometimes is you've got a company that's really has their content standing up and, is consistent, it's a machine, but it's not really generating the results they want or the wrong type of results. So I think there's a different approach to take there in terms of like reframing and repositioning their strategy to kind of point it in the right direction. So I tend to encounter, those three scenarios more often than not. And, it's really fun just to work with people from different walks of life and in different industries.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good, range of strategy that you get to play with, right? You get to work with people at the very beginning stages, middle stages, and then, we've got a strategy, but it's not working for us. Let's retool it. So that's really cool. Let me I'll put you on a spot and ask you a question without any prep here. But what would you say is like the biggest question you get from clients, or what's a big question that you often have to ask, or they ask you that you have to sort of help them figure out?
Yeah, how do I get this done in the time I have every day?
Sure.
The one that you hear all the time is, where do I find the time? Especially for a solopreneur when they're wearing all the hats,
Yep.
Their customer service, their sales, their marketing, their accounting, they're doing all of it. So how do I cut out this time? So a lot of what I like to do is really simplify the strategy and say, okay, break it down. It's just simple. You can dedicate 30 minutes a day. You block that on your calendar. You dig in. If you're working on a blog post for the week, it's going to be 1,000 words. Write 200 words in that 30 minutes and just stay 100% focused on that. Or if you're going to delegate that out to somebody else, you spend that 30 minutes in those conversations and offloading that work to somebody else that can handle it. I think it always, 9 times out of 10, that's the biggest question is where do I find the time? I know I want to do it. I know it's something that, that could be valuable for my business, but how do I cut out the time? Where do I find it?
Yeah. I find that with myself. I get a great strategy from somebody and I'm like, okay, this is awesome, but how do I execute it? So I appreciate strategists like you and consultants who can say, here's how to break it down. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Right. You don't need a team of 20 people to execute this for you for 30 minutes a day. That's great. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have that. I ran a survey on LinkedIn not too long ago that was surprising, just asking just that. How much time do you have in a day if you really think about it? And I think it's like something like 73% of the people who responded said they have either 30 minutes or an hour a day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I remember that survey. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So tell us a little bit about your personal path to becoming an expert. How would you describe that?
yeah, trial by fire.
Yep.
Kind of learning in the trenches. I built my first series of blogs on WordPress like in 2010, and knew I wanted to do it, but didn't really know much of what I was doing. Kind of self-taught WordPress, self-taught SEO. Was posting 4 or 5 times a day, just going for the volume route, and it worked well enough that I got some traction and actually had those blogs acquired by another network in California, and was able to come on with them as a consultant and just kind of learn from their process and help them build teams out and build writing teams. So I really enjoyed that too. It's like building writing teams for companies and helping them understand like who their talent is and what that should look like. So did that there and worked for them for a few years, and it kind of opened the door to my first full-time opportunity with a company called Wide Open Media Group that's based here in Austin. Pretty large digital publisher. I ran their content operations for about 4 years, managed a pretty large team of content creators and social media managers. So, I learned through the trenches and got to the point where I was at a director's level and, was managing people, and, it was a good opportunity. And then, kind of moved on from that and worked for a couple of software as a service companies and content marketing following that. And so I've had that experience too. And all those taught me, I guess, the nuts and bolts of, where I'm headed with the consulting work. And ultimately it's taught me also that I really know now that I want to work with a variety of companies and a variety of industries, because I like that variance in the day. And just really wanted to get away from tying myself to a single company. Just kind of control my own fate a little bit more, I guess. And that's where it's all come from. So
cool. Yeah, you must have seen like a lot of evolution in 10 years, right? Is there something you could say about that? Like what have you noticed that stands out in your mind?
Yeah, I think the evolution of social media and just content strategy in general has been really interesting. I was lucky enough at the kind of advent of Wide Open Media. We were there during the Facebook boom in terms of reach. And, you could publish an article on a website, throw it up on Facebook, instant reach, get all kinds of traffic, no problem. Man, this is magic. It must be really good. But the irony of that was it was a flaw ultimately in their business model. Figured it out. Like, we're going to hammer down on this and make it a lot harder. You're going to have to pay to play. So that whole landscape of the relationship between content and social media has changed dramatically. And that's why, during the course of my process, I really encourage people to not lean on social media, that it comes farther down the road. Your development, your content development comes first. Social media comes second. And ultimately, I'm a big believer in leaning in on one platform too. My preference is LinkedIn, obviously. I think probably somewhat creepy too. I think it's just, what the leverage you get from it is pretty much unmatched right now. I'd say people have success with Facebook groups too that are highly targeted. It just depends on what your preference is. But that's the big one, is not thinking social media first. Social's not going to be my traffic vehicle. Like later it can be, but content first is, I think, the right mindset. Yeah,
that's really interesting. Yeah, I remember even 4 years ago when I was first starting my business and I was doing things on Facebook a lot more. And, there was this game that we were all playing with the algorithm for a while. It's like, don't put your links in the post, put the link in the comment. And then, that didn't work after like a week or 2 weeks, no, the engagement is dropping again. You got to rejigger things one more time. And just, put, even on Instagram, right? Put the link in the profile, and like, but all of that has changed so much, and how the strategy, I really feel like keeping up is a full-time job in and of itself. And I am really, in a lot of ways relieved to hear you say like social doesn't have to be the main driver, and it shouldn't be where you put all your eggs, right? Focus on content first, because that's like my strategy, and more by necessity than by, strategy or anything. It's not like I had big designs to do it that way, but that's what I like to do. And I appreciate LinkedIn for that reason, because I feel like it does allow me to focus on the content and focus on finding the people who I think are in my tribe, whatever that means,
Right.
as opposed to numbers, algorithm, algorithm. Like, ugh, I can't do it.
You can chase the algorithm all day, but it's always going to be a step ahead, right? Like, I mean, the whole point of those is to work for the business and work for the company. It's not to work in your favor. So the more you chase them, I think that the harder you make it on yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
About consistency of the content and consistency of your voice, and you do it for long enough, and you have that pattern. People start to recognize your content for what it is. They come back to you for that very specifically. And you don't have to game the system. I mean, it doesn't hurt to game it a little bit at first when you're getting traction just to get it moving, but eventually it's just lost return, right? Like you're putting more into it and you're going to get back if you're trying to do that all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good tip there. Awesome. What would you say has helped you most in learning to own your expertise?
Teaching it. Ultimately, I think, being able to teach it, you learn by teaching. I learn by teaching. I think I'm able, I don't know, in a marketer's mind, we think in complex terms, I think, sometimes. And, you think of, in jargon and stuff like that, and like constantly having the necessity to distill that down into plain language, helps a lot. I think about that in my own writing that I do on my blog or when I'm writing for a client. It's always that kind of distilling the complex topics down to simple language. And I think as you do that, and as you start to teach in simple language, you start to really get down to the depth of the concepts of what you're teaching. You understand them better yourself, and therefore you can better communicate. I think it's just kind of a cycle that works together. I think I learned through teaching. There's things within conversation I wouldn't have anticipated, and then you learn from that because you're hearing a different point of view, or you're getting a question you might not have gotten before. So.
Yeah, and there's so many different ways to teach, right? Have you done online courses? Do you do trainings?
I haven't done online courses. I've done some small group coaching. Where I have like a few people like within a group, and it's a little bit more free form. I mean, we work around the topic, but take questions and kind of answer those on the fly too. Would like to experiment with courses at some point, but it's a whole different animal in terms of build those and market those. So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's interesting, because you mentioned, teaching on your blog, and I definitely think of the content I put out as teaching in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't have thought of it that way before starting a business. You think of teaching as in the classroom or online, instructing people. But yeah, you can coach people, like you're saying. You can even just putting out content is a way of teaching. Yeah. And even when your clients have to ask you questions, that's a form of teaching as well, right? And I get really excited about that because when I left teaching and when I left academia, formal teaching, I was like, I'm never going to do this again. I really love it. But I do it every day. So right. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of the irony is you think, when you leave a college classroom or you get that last degree that you're done learning, you're no more done learning than you're done teaching. Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
The curve. So.
Yeah, and I really liked what you said in the questionnaire. You said you want to help solopreneurs and startup founders demystify and simplify content strategies. And I mean, that just goes back to the whole idea of teaching it.
Yeah, and I think, people think, oh, it's so complex. Like, I don't want to take the wrong step and misstep and go out of the gates the wrong way and just screw up because of it. And, ultimately, it's not that complex. It can be simplified and, I think it's a lot about quick wins and consistent wins. I preach that a lot in my LinkedIn content just because if you have a really complex strategy, you're not going to win as often because you're chasing these weird concepts, you think that are kind of beyond your understanding. If it's very simple, like I can do this blog post a week, okay, there's a quick one. Like I've shared it to my social audience, there's another. I've done it again 2 weeks in a row now, there's another. So you just stay motivated, when you have smaller goals that are more achievable. And achieving those quick wins is important to stay motivated because burnout's right around the corner. If not, so. I think that's the mindset and how how I like to approach it with my clients.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're right that people do think, oh my God, I'm going to do something wrong. And that stops them from, right, trying things. But the irony is that if you do try the little things, you get the little wins, and that's your hit. And you're like, okay, I can keep going. I can get to the next thing.
Yeah, the analysis paralysis is very real, right? Like, it's easier to just beat it to death before you ever do anything. And, I think we're all guilty of it. I've had some concepts where I've bought domain names and thought about them and outlined them, sketched them out, had these great plans and, never pulled the trigger on it just for whatever reason.
Yes.
I think ultimately, it's that action orientation, like you just have to act.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Just take the first step. That's kind of the idea. Yeah. Yeah. I think, and it's important, even especially I think with social media, to be experimental, because even with me, like I had a really high performing post yesterday, and why was it that different from Monday's post? Not really. Or from the post last week, which got like 10 views. Like in my head, they're the same, same concept, same topic, basically. But for whatever reason, that one hit. And yes, you just have to.
You never know. I mean, it's strange. There'll be things you absolutely don't think will do well that do, and vice versa. I mean, I spent an hour on a post like, oh, this is the best thing ever, and crickets. Crank something out in 5-10 minutes does great.
Right.
There's no telling, and that's why I say like algorithm, like trying to chase that or understand what triggers it is largely a waste of time. I mean, you want to play to it to some extent. Like dwell time is a big thing that everybody talks about now. So, you see this kind of broetry format of the single lines,
Yep.
Really long posts.
Yeah.
Do that really well. There's ladies that do that really well and understand that format and play to it, but you want to use it all the time? Maybe not. I mean, so it's just trying to figure out what's natural, and if it doesn't all does well,
Yeah, so I think as a strategist, that must kind of drive you crazy. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you tell your clients like what are the measurable results you're looking for with this strategy?
Yeah, I tell
how do you
them
go about choosing goals.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Forget about likes, necessarily.
Okay.
That's great. If you've got that engagement in the form of likes, then that's fine. But really, more so comments and engagement. As people engaging like within the body of your posts, and they're asking questions that trigger conversation. I think a lot about pain points, and the way that I kind of format my content is around the pain points that I hear from talking to people. And if you can start those conversations and those flow within the comments, and you have even more opportunity as the creator to go in and continue to drop in solutions to pain points. And as you do that often enough, people start to recognize, okay, every time this person posts, I'm going to get some solution-based content here that can help me, improve my own situation. So I'm much more ask people to think about how they can engage their audience. And I think that comes, it's a two-sided coin on LinkedIn in particular. You have to go engage with other people first to expect engagement back. It's not going to happen in a vacuum. So that's where I push everybody is don't, do stuff just for the likes or, like you can. That's certainly a possibility. You'll see people with hundreds of likes or hundreds of engagements on a post with no comments. Well, what's that really doing for them? So
yeah.
That's my mind.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think there's that psychological barrier, to, just setting aside that question because, again, going back to the algorithm, right? It's made to give you that hit of dopamine when you see how many people have looked at your post and you get excited. But yeah, it can be a distraction, right? If you're not seeing the comments and engagements, if people are just saying, "Yay, good for you," like that's not what we're after, right? Really, we're trying to, it makes a lot of sense if you're trying to provide value, and like you said, hitting those pain points, really good tip. You're trying to provide value for your audience, then that's where to focus. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and it's just more naturally creates those conversations organically. Those conversations from your content eventually turn into messages or turn into contacts outside the platform that turn into business relationships. So I think it's just, kind of that.
Yes, it's been really serving me well to think about LinkedIn for networking as a networking platform. 100%. I'm having the conversations I would be having in person if not for COVID, and it's working, it's good. If I keep that as my focus, I'm good. I'm not getting upset about, man, I was doing so well and now this month engagement's dropped off.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, because there really kind of is a replacement for that for a lot of people. I see people who are like field marketers by trade that like do field marketing for companies that are now like, okay, well, this is the new field, right? Like I'm not in a hotel giving a presentation.
Right.
I have to do it through this medium. And,
yeah.
The people that can shift and adapt and do that are going to be successful, I think.
Yeah, that's good. Cool. One more question for you. So if you could go back in time and mentor your 20-year-old past self, what advice would you give him?
Yeah, life's going to happen. There's things that are controllable, there's things that are uncontrollable. I'm big on controlling the controllable. I have that on my desktop as a screensaver, so I'm always seeing that because ultimately that's all we can do. I mean, you're going to have great times, you're going to have terrible times, but I think in the midst of your 20s and your 30s, there are things that happen where you learn a lot, you don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Like things happen, and at the moment you're like, oh wow, I just learned something, but you encounter that situation again later. You've learned by force. You didn't even know you did. And
right.
It allows you the opportunity to handle situations better and the next time you encounter them. So I think not taking it too seriously, you're not going to be able to affect everything. Your 20s largely are going to be hard. Mine were. I moved something like 12 times in 6 years, trying to figure out, thought it was place, right? Like wherever you go, there you are. So.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's such a good point that you're all the way along, but in the moment it feel like, oh, there's nothing. I'm off track. I'm going in the wrong direction or whatever. But then when you look back when you're 40 or whatever, and you're like, oh, actually, this is what I was figuring out then, and this is why I did that, and oh, it makes so much sense. If only you knew it in the moment, and you could calm down and just be like, it's cool.
And taking people's advice is great at that age, and in that decade. But at the same time, I think you have to just do on your own and figure out what's right for you and what works for you, because ultimately it could be different. And being willing to take the risk there too is good. It's kind of opposite what seems reasonable, especially like in our world now, to take a risk with an opportunity, but the risks get harder. So.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. Yeah. It's an interesting way to live. I know for a fact, that I couldn't have done what I'm doing when I was 20. So, there's a lot of times when I think back on those 10 years I wasted in academia, but then I think, well, what else would I have been doing? I wasn't going to do this. There's no way that would have happened. And now I have found the thing that I love and I'm having a great time doing it. But I couldn't have done this even maybe 10 years ago. I had to get to that growth level where it was like, okay to take that risk for myself.
Right.
So, yeah.
You don't know that at the time. I mean,
right.
You have to go through situations to learn to find what you want. Get laid off a few times, Yeah,
or you change careers, you move around. Yeah, exactly. Takes time. Figure it out. Yeah. Cool. Well, let us know how we can find out more about you.
Yeah, sure. I'm on LinkedIn constantly. I'm on there every day. I post at least once a day on LinkedIn. So just, / Kris Hughes, my LinkedIn profile. The website's at krishughes.com. I blog there, a lot of kind of overview of my services and things of that nature. So again, I work with solopreneurs and startup founders just to help them demystify, simplify content strategy and really find things that are actionable and help them lead to quick wins. If they've got some traffic rolling in, figure out how to help them convert that, turn it into lead generation, customer acquisition. And then if they're struggling, to help them reframe and rebuild and, kind of go back and find a new way that may work better. So that's what I love to do and, really enjoy working with people in those worlds.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks so much, Kris. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Yep, you too. See you soon. Bye.